We can now reveal the turning point for Miami. The exact moment when things could have spiraled down the drain, but instead, the Hurricanes were able to solidify themselves as a college football playoff team.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. And yes, there is. 24 hours removed from the jubilation. I'm still on cloud nine. The jubilation, the joy of the Miami Hurricanes being in the college football playoff. How did you feel when they got to the 10 seed and we were wondering, oh no, is it going to be Notre Dame? Is it going to be Miami? How did you feel in that exact moment when Miami flashed on that screen? I jumped off my seat, literally. I jumped off my seat and started running around my house like a lunatic. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we'll take a look at the matchup with the Texas A&M Aggies. That'll be December 20th, 12 noon on the road for the first playoff game. And spoiler alert, these are two really, really good teams. The Aggies are no slouch. There aren't really any glaring weaknesses on either team, in my opinion. We'll talk about why Miami ultimately made it in the field, because there are some misconceptions and some assumptions as to why the committee put Miami in. We'll set the record straight. But let's talk about the turning point in Miami's season, because, folks, if you were to, and I don't recommend you do this, but if you were to go back to the shows that I was doing here right after the SMU loss, I thought, and I said it on those shows, that I thought Miami's goose was cooked when it came to college football playoff contention. I thought we were essentially out, right? And don't lie to me. I know a lot of you felt that way, right? Not only, hey, how does Miami now get in with 2 losses? And the other thought was, hey, based on the way that they were playing in that period of time, the team had started the season strong, winning their first 5 and looking great. You hit that lull in the middle of the year. And a lot of us thought, how are they going to respond? Is this thing going to spiral? They have 4 games left. Are they going to go 2-2? 3-1 probably isn't enough to get in. There's no way they go 4 for 4, a lot of you were thinking. So Mario Cristobal gave us some insight on exactly what happened, how these guys were able to turn things around. And that turnaround is mental and physical, right? Because you need to avoid all of the mental traps of, hey, now we have too much pressure or we're just not good enough. Because, for those of us, again, if you've been watching and covering Miami Hurricanes football for decades, how many times in the last 2 decades have we found Miami in that situation that they were in after losing to SMU? Take that exact situation. Usually the team is going to find a way to implode, to lose again, and to come up short down the stretch. That was what a lot of us were bracing ourselves for. But I give this particular team, and it's from the coaches on down, and we'll tell you what the coaches did to turn this situation around. But if I can borrow a phrase from Coach Cristobal, that locker room, the players on that team are made out of the right stuff. You've got guys who are mentally strong and were able to pull up themselves and pull up their teammates. When I think about the leadership that comes, and I'm surely going to leave some of the top leaders out, I apologize in advance, but I think about guys like Rueben Bain, Carson Beck, CeCe Mauinoa, Akeem Mesidor, Mark Fletcher, CJ Daniels, leaders in that locker room who are able to keep those attitudes high, those spirits high, and remind these guys they still had a chance and they still had everything to play for. So let me give you the turning point here as revealed by Mario Cristobal. And this is downright powerful. And again, this is something we haven't had enough moments like this from the Canes over the years. This is how Cristobal is changing the culture through his leadership and through the types of young man he recruits to play for this program. So Mario Cristobal, in his media availability this week, he described a team meeting that they had right after the SMU loss. That was the fork in the road. After SMU, things could have continued to spiral downward, or, which has ended up what happened here, you could turn things around and bounce back. So Cristobal said about that meeting, quote, "We were going to pour every ounce of energy into just improving, into our players, and not allowing it to get negative," he said. "You're 6-2 at that point. You have a chance as long as you hit on all cylinders." He described it as the best meeting we ever had. He said they took Notre Dame, Florida, and USF, clips of film from all of those games, which to that point were Miami's best performances of the season. He put them on a reel. They just turned out the lights and just stated to our guys, let's realize who the F we are. Not remember. Let's realize who we are and why. And then for 10, 12, 15 minutes, lights off, he said, no audio. We just watched it. It hit everybody right between the eyes, he said. We turned the lights back on, we went to work, and we haven't looked back since. That's powerful. Folks, past Miami teams over the years. Obviously, I'm not talking about the ones in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. Those teams had the right stuff, but a lot of the recent teams haven't. A lot of the past Miami teams would have lost again after SMU. Previous teams did not have the right leadership on staff or in the locker room. This team is different, and that turning point was powerful. They went back to work. They didn't look back. And you think about the changes. The effort went up, right? Miami had, the defense was dynamite for most of the season, top 10 defense in the country, but they had some lapses in the Louisville game. Overall, the team had lapses in the SMU game. The defense played lights out for the rest of the season. I think the bigger change, of course, was on the offensive side of the football. Carson Beck, final 4 games of the season, was among the best quarterbacks in the country with the way he was able to raise his level of play. Malachi Toney, most exciting playmaker in the country, was able to continually raise his bar and get more involved in the offense. Miami was able to discover more variety with their running game. You did miss Mark Fletcher for a stretch of games. He came back strong at the end of the season, but you were able to discover what lightning, you already had thunder, then you had lightning with Gerard Pringle, what that was able to add to your offense. And you were without C.J. Daniels for most of those games. Keelan Marion stepped up and became a major weapon in the passing game. You got a lot more at the end of the year from Elijah Lofton, who caught some touchdown passes. Like, this team got better at a moment where a lot of us expected them to get worse. And coming up next, not only will we have the details from the College Football Playoff Committee as to why Miami got the nod, we'll also have another thing. This gets me excited. Mario Cristobal painted a very optimistic picture from an injury standpoint. Could the Hurricanes get one of their top defensive players back in the fold just in time for the CFP? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And you can get your tickets at College Station. If you're traveling up there, you can get your tickets at Game Time to watch Miami at Texas A&M. And oh, by the way, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. With 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. Because with Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Folks, you pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch is going to look like from your exact seat before you buy. And prices include the fees up front, which I love. There are no last-second surprises at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download Game Time, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go! Download Game Time today. Guys, I had mentioned in recent days that we have seismic announcements here on Locked On Canes, and this is happening starting today. We've already had several folks sign up. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you're a true diehard Miami Hurricanes fan, the brand new Everydayer All Access tier is built for you on the new Everydayers Club. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount on the Locked On merch store. People have been asking me, where's the merch? We finally got merch for you. Head to lockedoncanes.supercast.com to join the Everydayer program and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We'll see you in the new Everydayers Club. All right, so how about this? Miami had a significant injury. It was, I think, the 10th game of the year was when this went down, the NC State game, losing Keionte Scott for a long-term injury. Keionte Scott ended up being a semifinalist for the Thorpe Award, one of the top DBs in America. At the time Keionte got injured, who started at nickel all year for Miami, at the time he got injured, he was the highest Pro Football Focus graded defensive back in America. Keionte Scott, hell of a football player. He's been out with a lower body injury, right? So, we didn't know what the postseason was going to look like for Miami. Were they going to play, a Gator Bowl or something? I don't think they could play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl 2 years in a row. But we didn't know. Is it going to be a bowl game like that? Is it going to be college football playoff? Keionte Scott, we thought we'd never see him play for Miami again. Not so fast, my friends. So Cristobal was asked about Keionte Scott on Sunday, and he did not rule out a Keionte Scott return for the playoff. He said Keionte's recovery is trending up. In fact, Keionte is back running this week. For someone with, I think, a foot injury, running again is a really good sign. And we are now 12 days away from that game. He's almost got 2 further weeks to recover. Mario Cristobal said he is hopeful for Keionte Scott. And if Scott is able to return, you talk about incredibly valuable to have your best defensive back available against talented receivers at Texas A&M, especially Casey Concepcion, who we'll talk more about. On other injury front, we can expect anybody else who was banged up. Now, Keionte Scott, I'm going to call that one a maybe, but David Blay is going to be back. Jacoby Thomas and O.J. Frederick were already back, but they're going to be at full health. Anybody who was banged up, you can expect these guys to be all clear now for the playoff game. And if Miami can get Keionte Scott back, what a bonus. Mario Cristobal, he felt kind of the way all of us did, right? I mentioned that when we saw Miami's logo come up on the screen in the playoff, I jumped off my seat like a little kid. I got so excited. Mario Cristobal described his reaction as an explosion of gratitude. Just, gratitude for the progress that they've made. He talked about, coming across country, right? Leaving Oregon. He had a cushy job there in Eugene. He chose to come back to his alma mater to build Miami into a college football playoff team, and here we are. And I told this story on the show once before, but every July, I go to the ACC football summer meetings in Charlotte, the ACC kickoff. And, one of the great privileges of going out there and covering the conference every year is I always get one-on-one FaceTime with Mario. Miami's media department is gracious enough to let me and the other local media who travel up there to get one-on-one interviews and access with Mario. Mario knows I'm a diehard. I mean, I dress like this 365 days a year. He knows that I'm all in. Actually, my father, a UM professor, taught Mario Cristobal back in the early 90s. So you have a connection there as well. And I remember Mario, after he and we finished a 10-minute interview on air discussion. And when we were off the air, he looks at me and he tells me, because he knows how much I love this program. Now, I don't think I love it as much as Mario does, because nobody loves it as much as Mario does. But he looked at me and he said, I'm going to bring this thing back. Like I don't think he said I think he said, I don't want to make him sound like an egomaniac. I think he said we're going to bring this thing back. Like he wanted to assure me that they're bringing this program in the right direction. Not that I doubted him on that, but I just remember in that moment just feeling the passion and the drive and the desire that he had and always has to bring this team back to prominence. And I'm so happy that we're seeing this now. So, an explosion of gratitude, I think, is a great way to describe it. So for the College Football Playoff Committee, I was listening to Hunter Yurachek, the committee chair, break it down, listening to some of the other, ESPN reporters breaking it down afterwards. Here is why Miami gets the nod, right? Why Miami over Notre Dame, which it came down to. The committee chair said that, at the time when BYU was ranked in front of Miami, in his words, in the committee's logic, at that time they couldn't directly compare Miami to Notre Dame because in their minds, this was their logic. Notre Dame was better than BYU, and BYU was better than Miami. That's how they felt at that time. So until BYU lost to Texas Tech again, that's when they felt comfortable dropping BYU. Miami and Notre Dame were finally back-to-back or head-to-head, and they were no longer comparing three or more teams. So essentially, and this is not my logic, this is the committee logic, I'm just explaining, they never felt like they could directly weigh the head-to-head because they always felt like Miami and Notre Dame were not in a single tiebreaker. They were in a 3-team or a 4-team, it's sometimes a 5-team tiebreaker, and so they weren't weighing the head-to-head because it wasn't a direct scenario. Miami and Notre Dame hadn't played all of those other teams. They'd only played each other. So not until BYU dropped behind Miami did the committee feel comfortable elevating Miami for the head-to-head. So that's the reason, that's the stated reason why they didn't jump Miami until the final rankings when BYU dropped behind the Hurricanes. So that was his explanation. The committee chair, he noted, this is something, I was saying this for weeks. I know the Notre Dame fans, they all became analytics experts, and they're like, well, no, Notre Dame is better than Miami in FPI and SPI and XYZ plus metrics. They were really close, folks, in all of those analytics. Like, even if Notre Dame was ranked in front of Miami, it was 1, 2, 3 spots in each of those. It was very close. And that's what Yurachek said. He noted that all the other metrics between Notre Dame and Miami were similar enough, were close enough, that head-to-head had to make the difference. Common sense prevailed. It was also said that the committee, finally, they went back and watched the actual game again, and they saw how Miami controlled Notre Dame head-to-head for the better part of 60 minutes, and Miami never trailed in the game. They were dominant at the line of scrimmage. I feel like a lot of the stuff that Nick Saban was saying may have had something to do with this, right? The committee wasn't paying any attention to Donno. Maybe they paid attention to the greatest college football coach of all time. Maybe Nick Saban helped to sway them because he spoke up for Miami during the weeks. And here's one, because I see a lot of there's these weird self-proclaimed Miami fans who, like, they love Manny Diaz. And listen, I got no hate for Manny Diaz, but there's this weird, like, sect or a cult of Miami fans who wish Manny Diaz had never been fired. Very strange people. And they were like, well, you got to thank Manny Diaz for Miami getting in, because since Duke won the ACC championship and they weren't going to get a bid, the committee felt sorry for the ACC. For what it's worth, the committee chair was directly asked that question. If Duke winning the ACC played a factor in Miami getting in, and he unequivocally said no, that wasn't a factor. He said Duke winning the ACC did not have any impact on the way they evaluated Miami, that the Miami versus Notre Dame evaluation happened independently from other factors. So he claims they would have been more than content to leave the ACC out of the playoff had Miami not had the resume that they had. So this We don't need to thank Manny Diaz. So, I mean, if you want to thank him for, just for whatever other reason, but you don't have to thank him for Miami getting in. The committee chair said that had nothing to do with it, okay? Other reasons why Miami gets in. The Hurricanes, as we talked about, they're playing with an upward trajectory. They improved for the final month of the season. Carson Beck, super efficient, super effective late in the year. Malachi Toney has become arguably the most exciting utility player in all of college football right now. I would say even more exciting than a really good one in Concepcion that we're going to see in a couple of weeks, right? Miami has the best pass rushing duo in the country with Rueben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. This team earned their way in. Hurricanes finished the season top 20 offense and a top 10 defense. This is a complete team. You couldn't say that last year. Last year when they went 10-2, Miami had a playoff caliber offense and a G5 level defense. Now they've got a playoff caliber offense and an elite defense. So this team doesn't have holes the way that they did a year. It's a complete football team. And yeah, this program is absolutely on the right track in Mario Cristobal's fourth year. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the way he's building this roster the right way by stacking top 10 recruiting classes. I also think he's found the right mix of coordinators and assistant coaches. And just an update as of this morning, not to say I don't want him to ever get a promotion somewhere, but a little selfishly, I'm relieved that it looks like Shannon Dawson is going to be staying at Miami, the offensive coordinator, because, as of yesterday, he was considered to be one of the top 3 for the Tulane head coaching job, and he's a Louisiana native, so there's some tie-ins there, but Tulane has gone in a different direction. They just promoted passing game coordinator Will Hall to be their permanent next head coach. So I don't think we're going to lose Shannon Dawson. So at some point, I want Dawson to get everything he wants, head coaching job somewhere, but I'm greedy. So I want continuity on the staff for next year. By the way, Notre Dame, you saw the way their postseason ended. So they didn't get into the playoff, and they took their ball and they went home. They have declined a bid to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. They're throwing a tantrum. They didn't get their way, and so now they're too good to play in a bowl game. And they would have matched up with BYU. That would have been a really good game for the first 2 teams out. But Notre Dame has decided we're too good to play in a regular old bowl game. And apparently this was something that their players voted on and the administration agreed. I don't like the mentality. I don't like the mentality of we're not going to get our way, so we're just not going to play again this year. And if you treat us like this again, you'll never see us play in a regular bowl. It's very soft. It's very petulant. It's very childish. It's very Notre Dame. I'm going to answer questions from you guys from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat when we come back. And by the way, the best way now to get part of the Insiders chat is to become an all-access Everydayers Club member. LockedOnCanes.supercast.com. If you join the all-access tier, you're going to be part of our Locked On Canes Insiders text group. Let's talk some Texas A&M. You want to keep it locked right here? We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. Guys, the holidays come with 2 big goals: feeding people well and finding gifts they'll actually love. And when you want both handled in one move, Omaha Steaks is the way to go. From hosting to gifting, they deliver the world's best steak experience right to your door. Because during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you can stock up and save in a huge way. 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. And it gets even better. Locked On College listeners get an extra $35 off with code COLLEGE at checkout. I love how easy it is to gift. It shows up frozen, packed beautifully, ready to cook. Steaks are perfectly aged and insanely tender. Guys, this is restaurant level in your home, and it's holiday magic made easy. Order by 6 p.m. Eastern time, and it ships the same day. Save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code COLLEGE. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network number 1. We get a question from Miami Promolagder. think that's his nickname he typed to me. He says, good morning, Alex. And first of all, whew, so grateful we're in. My question is, do you feel we caught a break with a noon kickoff? We have had a couple of those back-to-back, and we just seem to come out more ready to roll earlier we play. I could be way off, and I want your opinion. He said, side note from the Notre Dame fans, they should be more upset with Alabama being gifted in and not us for the team that actually dominated them and won the head-to-head. Thank you kindly, and go Canes. As far as the noon game, yeah, I mean, Miami looked great at noon in Pittsburgh. They looked great noon at Virginia Tech. I mean, SMU was a noon game, didn't look that great. But Cristobal has said it that he actually likes the noon games because that's very much in line with the time of day that they usually practice, right? Like they usually start their practices around 9:15, 9:30 in the morning, but they're practicing till like 11:30. Sometimes they do practice. So I think the only reason why they don't usually practice high noon is because it's so hot in South Florida. But the team operates early. I know people have this like stereotype about college players that, oh my gosh, these are college kids. If they have to play at noon, they were all up till 5 a.m. the night before. It's not like that with high-level Division I football players, certainly not at Miami. These guys are used to operating in the morning. Noon should not be a problem for them. And also, I'll say this. Kyle Field, that's one of the loudest environments in college football. Usually my rule of thumb is when you're going into one of the toughest places to play, you'd probably rather play at noon than at night. So I'm going to, there's still going to be great energy in that building, but usually if it's a 7 or 8 p.m. game, that's usually up a couple of extra notches. So I'm perfectly fine with the noon game. Maybe they won't be, which will be 11 a.m. their local time. Maybe they won't be quite as crazy at that point. We get one from John in Tampa. It says Texas A&M has developed unique and equally dominant on O-line and D-line to Miami. We know Mike Elko knows how to game plan. Elko, who of course he's at his alma mater doing great things at Texas A&M. He used to be at Duke and had a lot of success there. Says we also have to deal with the 12th man, which we did a few years ago. What do you think are the keys to getting out of there with a dub? We'll talk more about the line of scrimmage. That is strength on strength, right? These are two of the most successful offensive and defensive lines in America going head-to-head. So we can debate for the next 12 days who has the advantages. I think Miami's defensive line is an advantage over every offensive line in the country, Texas A&M included, but they do have a really successful offensive line. Texas A&M is only right behind Miami in sacks allowed. I think Miami has only allowed 11 sacks all year. Texas A&M has only allowed 12. So these are two very good offensive lines. So honestly, I think when the lines of scrimmage are so well matched up, I think explosive plays are going to make the difference, right? Kevin Concepcion versus Malachi Toney, two very similar players in both offenses. Who makes more plays in this game? Which quarterback makes fewer mistakes? Which team turns the football over less? I think creativity, which is something we've seen from Miami's offense the last month, and explosive plays is going to make the difference in this game. Because I think both lines of scrimmage are going to be really good. I'll probably give Miami's defensive line the slight edge in either of those matchups, but I think it's going to come down to explosive plays. I really do. Grace asks, hey, realistic chances of Miami going all the way? Well, I'll tell you this. If our Canes are able to go all the way, they're going to be probably the most battle-tested college football playoff winner ever. When you think about the gauntlet we'll have to go through. And listen, when you get the last at-large, you can expect a gauntlet. Miami has to try on the road to beat a really talented Texas A&M team that went 11-1. Your reward for beating them would be facing the defending national champs and Jeremiah Smith with Ohio State. Your reward for beating Ohio State, if you can do that, that'll be in the Cotton Bowl. Then your reward would be you've got to face the winner of probably Georgia versus Ole Miss, likely Georgia, I think. And then if you win that game, you'll face probably Indiana in the championship game. So, listen, I'm not complaining. I'm happy to be in, and I know no matter which bracket you're in, if you want to win a championship, you're going to have to beat some of those teams anyway. Miami gets a gauntlet, but I think that's going to be a great measuring stick for where the Hurricanes are, and I look forward to it. We get a question, what do we know about Texas A&M's defensive and offensive lines? I mentioned it's strength on strength. Both teams really good. They rank right behind Miami in sacks given up. Left tackle Trey Zune, the third, one of the highest pass blocking grades in the country. Texas A&M is tied first nationally in team sacks per game. They generate a lot of sacks. Cashius Howell has 11.5 on the year. So that's going to be a huge test for Miami's offensive line to keep Carson Beck protected. We get this one from Victor who says, hey, how do you feel about our seeding and our matchup with A&M? I feel like we can beat them, but I would have much rather had the Oklahoma matchup as the 9 seed. Yeah, I think, to me, outside of the G5 teams who got in, my opinion, I think Oklahoma, outside of those G5s, is probably the most beatable team in the bracket because their offense stinks. So, it is what it is. We were not fortunate enough. Alabama lost to Oklahoma, but they lost to them after putting up double the yardage. So Alabama should have won that game, and I don't know. I'd say they probably win the rematch, but I don't know because Bama's not been playing well. So I don't know, but yeah, Oklahoma to me, if you don't get JMU or Tulane, that would have been the matchup I wanted, and we just missed it, unfortunately. Oh man, this is a good question. Will A&M have a better understanding of how to keep Malachi Toney in check with having a guy like KC Concepcion on their roster? Same for Miami guarding KC. How do you think those matchups will look? Yeah, you're right. I mean, both defenses face a guy like that in practice every single day. So I think you're probably a little bit more aware. But I mean, honestly, no situation is the same. I would say, if Miami is able to have Keionte Scott back, they'd be even more equipped. But I think with Miami's corners and safeties and the way that they've played, I like Miami's matchup against anybody, but I think it's safe to say both Concepcion and Malachi Toney are both going to get theirs. I do think Malachi is a little bit more dynamic. He's got the edge and receiving yardage and total yardage. He's thrown a couple of passes this year. Concepcion hasn't. He used to do that at NC State. Surprisingly, he's not attempted a pass this year. Maybe this will be the first game he tries one. I don't know. But definitely it gives an edge to both defenses being able to go against guys like that in practice. I got a lot more questions here that we're going to answer. I'm going to do, for those who become all-access members of the Everydayers Club, I'm going to do, I already did a bonus episode today on the All Access page. I'm going to do another one later, answer some more of you guys' questions because so many great ones came in. And I want to thank the Everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and for making this network number one. It's going to be a busy couple weeks preparing for this Texas A&M matchup. So we'll talk to you again tomorrow on a Truth Teller Tuesday on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the number one Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.